as far as, goals for making $1 million this year or whatever, it's like, those don't matter to me as much as who are you? How do you want to show up? What's important to you? And what kind of life are you trying to build?
On the 41st episode of Passion in Progress, Phoebe Mroczek. Phoebe is a podcaster, coach, and marketing strategist who helps online entrepreneurs create a profitable business that is an honest reflection of who they are and what they want most. She's the host of the Unbecoming Podcast, a show that helps entrepreneurs release judgments, beliefs, and past conditioning, holding listeners back from living a more meaningful life. And I strongly suggest those who are listening to this podcast who are unfamiliar with Phoebe, go check out her podcast. But I don't think you'll need too much swaying to go check out her content after hearing what she has to say in this episode. And just a couple more background notes on Phoebe. Over the past few years, she's built an online marketing business that helped established entrepreneurs refine their paid ad and launch strategies. Created a podcast she co-hosted with 900K plus downloads and organized various in-person events, masterminds, and online communities. She's been to over 64 countries on 6 continents. A well-traveled person that has a lot of meaningful things to say, and I can't wait for you guys to hear this. If you would like to share this podcast out with a friend, you can tag me at Javier Mercedes X. That's Javier Mercedes, just like the car X. I always enjoy seeing what people have to say about the podcast, and when people tag me in their social posts, it lets me know that, yes, what I'm doing is providing value for those people out there, and that's what this is all about. If you have been digging the show and what I've been up to, you can support me and what I do in this show through Patreon. That's www.patreon.com/Javier Mercedes. Thank you to everybody that is a patron so far. It means so much to me that you guys want to help support the show and what I've been doing that way. Let's go ahead and move into episode 41 of the Passion in Progress show with Phoebe Mroczek. What is up, Mercedes? Javier Mercedes here for yet again another Passion in Progress show, where we talk to inspiring individuals, and hopefully through hearing their stories, you too are motivated to go out and pursue your passions as well. Today on the show, we have speaker, life coach, business coach, and podcast host, Phoebe Mroczek. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm excited. This is so awesome. I'm so happy to be here and just to have a good conversation. Thanks for having me.
With that being said, can you talk about the concept behind your podcast and what it's called?
Yep. So the podcast is called Unbecoming, and I heard
love that, by the way.
I do too. I feel like, when you have those moments, you're like, I nailed it. That feels very appropriate for who I am. So there's a quote by Paulo Coelho, who wrote The Alchemist, and it says, maybe the journey isn't so much about becoming anything. Maybe it's actually about unbecoming everything that isn't truly you to step in who you really are. And that resonates so strongly with me because I feel like the first, even 30 years of my life was doing things for other people. And really, I can't even say I lost a piece of myself because I didn't even know that piece existed. So the unbecoming process for me is really a practice of releasing judgments and expectations and past conditionings to live a more meaningful, fulfilling life. And what does that mean? It's different for every person, but the idea and concept of actually releasing expectations from other, that other people put on us or that we, self-induced pressure is so important. And so to your point about me kind of getting here and, networking, that's just who I am, right?
Yeah,
it's like this, I just want to meet everyone and I want to hear their story. And, as a business coach, we hear all the time, the strategy and how you do it and whatever. And then Simon Sinek came and said, start with why. And people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I actually go one step further and say, people actually buy who you are before they ever buy why you do what you do. And so even that's just what I live into, right? Is like this idea of who am I? Who are you? We connected on Instagram and I was like, oh, this is so awesome and exciting and let's meet. And I just want to hear your story and who you are and why you love it here and celebrate you for you. So it really isn't, the concept of networking, right? I don't even have business cards. I don't own any of that
exactly.
stuff,
That's why I was like, in today's day and age, whenever I hear networking, I'm like, yeah, I guess that's what it's called, but it's just like meeting people,
totally. It's like actually like just giving a shit about people, right? And and that's something that I always have done. And the thought of even maybe just as I've matured or I don't know what it is, but it's been this, like, I just have gotten way better at listening, and because I really care and I want to hear how I can help you. And Austin is such a great community where everyone just wants to like know everyone and get to know people and connect them with others. And, obviously you are no exception to that. And it's been so nice to be in a place where I already feel very welcome and like I blend in and stand out and, have that nice balance of the two, which is so exciting.
Yeah, I think she's being kind of humble right now, but if you were to pop over to her podcast and listen to just one episode, you would get quite the idea of the value that you provide for your listeners. I get lost in just I'm like 2 episodes deep. I didn't even realize this. Or like I'm 3 episodes in. Wow. With that being said, what you were just talking about, one of the other guys that I love listening to is David Meltzer and the playbook. And one of his quotes that he says is, be more interested than interesting. What does that mean to you?
I love that, because actually exactly what I'm saying is like the listening and really caring about people, right? But then there's this other part, which is very interesting to me as well, is like the
love that.
Because I think the big thing for me was meeting all these gurus, and I've worked with some big names and people that you would know online, and I've been kind of the behind the scenes, and then you get in there and you have a conversation and you know who they are, and you're like, you're just like not that interesting. And so and like I don't say it in like a really crappy way, in those moments I was just like, oh, okay. And it just was like a light bulb thing. I was like, right. The way that I stand out is just because I'm interesting. The way you stand out is because you're interesting too. We're just interesting in our own ways. And so the being interested, I can now make that connection, right? I think people get really lost in the details of I don't have this story or I don't have that attached to my name or whatever. I'm not friends with this person. But really what it is what are the core emotions that we can really connect on? And so for me, I talk a lot about loneliness because I can speak to that. I've felt that a lot of my life, being different, being excited, travel, all those like, curiosity, confusion, all those things that really are what connect people and what help other people connect to you. So I think it is, a simultaneous thing, if I could be really honest, is like be interested and be actually just interesting, do things that make you interesting, like be the person that you want to be friends with, right? Mm-hmm. I'm constantly like, well, I'm being very not interesting today. All right, what can I do to like spruce this up? Maybe I just need to go for a walk and that makes me feel better. And when I exude confidence and clarity and I'm excited about what I'm doing, I'm passionate about the things that I'm working on, people are are attracted to that. People want you on their podcast, they want you on their shows, they just want to be around you. So I think it's an interesting balance of being interested and interesting.
Yeah, there's so many things I want to talk about just from that. Let's say, like, take Joe Rogan, for instance. When I got into podcasting in the very beginning, I was like, this guy's podcasting so much. Like, how does he have time to do stuff? But he does. And I think once you start meeting other people, especially on the podcasting platform where you're interviewing entrepreneurs and you're a part of a doer space, you just get motivated to go out and do more things. I think it's the whole you surround yourself with X amount of people and that brings up the level of who you are, But I actually just was at a conference in New York and there were these 2 YouTubers, Becky and Chris. They had this video where they coincidentally, one of them knows how to fly a helicopter, so they can do that kind of thing for interesting stuff. But he had this thing where he's a surgeon, so he gets really tied up during the week. And he makes just a bucket list, just a weekend bucket list. He's like, you know what? I could stay in Netflix and do all that stuff because, like, I love doing that. But I'm going to make this weekend bucket list. And it's like, I want to go have lunch, since he owns a helicopter. Like, he flew into this one place where he landed on an island, like, in the middle of a lake. And he's like, cool, off the bucket list, I did something interesting. But with that being said, with your podcast, do you have that kind of balance where you're like, I need to do all of the business things and also live an interesting life, or not necessarily interesting life, but who and what you want to do in life? Or do you find that it's just who you are?
Yeah. So a really good question. I find the people that I'm working with are entrepreneurs, right? And so I find that is such a label that we put on ourselves. It's something we wear, it's a badge of honor. We wear it with pride to be entrepreneurs. But what I think gets lost in the mix is that we it's like, I am this, I am an entrepreneur. So your business then becomes your identity, right? And I believe that we build businesses as extensions of who we are, which is great. But only recently in the last 2 years have I really realized that business and entrepreneurship is actually a really small piece of who I am. And the Phoebe of 2 years ago would hate the Phoebe me of today saying that, because she so identified as that and wanted people to perceive her as this amazing entrepreneur, which I love that. If someone says that about me, I'd be thrilled. But I've now realized that's actually a small piece of who I am. There are all these other pieces of who I am, what I represent. And, you're talking about the doers and what it's like, I'm more in the camp of the beers, right? So
I love that. Yeah.
I don't care what you do, right? I care who you are. And so when we talk about how to grow a business, everything that I'm doing and being in the world is a reflection of me. And so the lens that I'm looking at everything through. So I love the weekend bucket list. That's such a good idea. And I'm looking at it through a lens of adventure, right? So I look at things in my life that are core values for me. And one of them is adventure. I love being spontaneous. I love to travel. And people, I always hear those it would be nice if I didn't have kids, I had more money, I had a bit better business, whatever it is, excuses. But I can adventure around Austin. That's what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks. So it's really a mindset shift. It's okay, I want to live a rich, fulfilling, meaningful life. Well, how am I doing that today? And so that's just the lens that I'm looking at everything through, whether it's a business opportunity, a podcast, a show, any kind of opportunity. Is this going to be fun? That's the first filter. And if it's not, then I don't do it. So that's just who I am.
No
right?
fun zone.
Exactly.
Does not enter your reality.
Whatever's sometimes you don't have to, you have to do the non-fun things to get the fun. And I'm right. But then I ask myself, what would make this fun? What would make this feel fun? What would make this feel easy? And what would make this feel honest? So if I'm doing my taxes, that's not fun for me, but I put on good music or I invite a friend over, we have some wine and I do my taxes, so.
You just gave the best example ever.
I hate to.
I think everybody can agree with they don't like doing taxes.
Right. It's
myself
the boring,
included.
monotonous stuff. But how can you make it not that? How can I make, a walk to the coffee shop adventurous? Well, I just go a different way. And I was just living in San Francisco and, I got to know the city so well because I was always on an adventure, and everyone that knows me really well would, I think, say that would be one word that people would use to describe me as adventurous, because I'm constantly stretching myself and trying to see where I can, do things a little bit differently. So I think to your point, to your question, it's just who I am as a person. And so whatever those values are for you, those are the lenses and the filters that you should look through your life with. And your bank account and your calendar will tell you what you value. So, yeah,
that's a recent concept that I heard from. I'm just going to keep bringing up YouTubers.
Yeah.
By the way, you can watch this on YouTube if you're not. But so Alex Becker he does online business things. And he recently came out with a video about goals and how when you're going for a goal, just become the goal itself, and what you're talking about as opposed to making the action and doing, which is part of it, but just have that pivot and have that paradigm shift of become the person that if you see X, Y, and Z in that goal, reverse engineer it. Well, who is the person that you need to be in order to achieve that? And then just start being that person right now.
Totally. The only correction I would make is who you want to unbecome, right? So we got to stay on brand.
I love how, and whenever, I was actually going to say that, it's whenever somebody, if you were to write a review for Phoebe on iTunes, make sure to use the word unbecome and not become.
I will go in there and correct you. No, but you are, you're so right. And I think also what I talk about a lot in terms of goals is I actually don't have that. I used to be a goal setter. I've always been very outcome based. I'm a former athlete and I cared about the scoreboard. That's all that mattered. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you play. It just matters if you win. And so that was always my attitude when it came to business, when it came to my life.
Fierce.
Totally. And I was just because I was so in my head.
It was in soccer, wasn't it?
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah. And so there you go. You did your research. And so with that said, it took me a long time. And even still, I'm still learning all of this stuff. I think real leaders are learners, right? And so we're leading through learning. And as I've approached my life and goals, for example, because I would always just use goals as another thing to beat myself up with, because I didn't have $1 million year, 12 years ago when I said I would be a millionaire by this age. And what I realized is now that I'm building the habits, right? I'm building the habits, not the goals. And so if the goal, I could go on and on about this, because I think goals tend to set people up for failure, right? And I want to set myself up for a win every day. So before 9 a.m., I always accomplish 3 things. And whatever those 3 things are, I just want to start my day off with a win. And one of those things is just getting in a good habit of reverse engineering whatever your goal is. And what would that goal look like if you had to break it down into bite-sized daily chunks and implement that habit today? Don't start tomorrow or Monday, diet starts Monday, whatever, just be that, just be it and do the thing, be a person of integrity, do what you say you're going to do, and be consistent. And at the end of the year, I guarantee, because the thing is, I feel I'm quite a spiritual person. And when I think it's selfish, or not selfish, maybe arrogant of us to think that we know better than the universe, right? That here's my goal, here's what I'm going to accomplish. I don't actually agree with that. It's like, if I put in the work and I'm actually doing the thing that I say I'm going to do, I'm showing up constantly with conviction for who I am as a person, then by the end of that, who knows what I'm going to accomplish or achieve? I just know that I'm going to be a better person. And being a better person makes me a better friend, a better partner, a better business coach, a better personal coach, podcaster, all those things, the overflow of that. But if I focus on me first, and I focus on making myself and being the person I want to be, not waiting for that one day when someone deems me worthy of, now you can start a podcast, now you can do this, then you're just so much better off, and your life is going to be so much more meaningful and fulfilling.
Yeah, at the turn of the year, a lot of the communities and everything I was in were like, all right, what's everybody's goals for this year and what's all that stuff? And in my own personal, journey, what was happening was I just started to see what was working, what wasn't working on YouTube, because that's like where I'm growing right now and where I'm focusing my energy. And for me, the biggest part was consistency. I was like, I don't know what a lofty goal for me is. Like, I just had a podcast that I released yesterday where the guy I interviewed, amazing guy, Cody Warner, and he was like, hey, like 40 million subscribers. And I was like, it's awesome that you have that. But for me, I was like, the fact of being consistent is my goal right now. And like, I just want to see like where that takes me, because that in and of itself just takes a lot of grit to, like, for this podcast, every single Wednesday it's out. Like nothing. Well, I mean, it was on a Christmas one time, so I was like, nobody's probably going to listen to a podcast on Christmas, so I released it on a Thursday. Sorry, people. But I think more people listen to it that way. What does consistency mean to you? From the aspect of like where you were, I don't know, like 10 years ago, 20 years ago to now, like what does it mean to you?
Yeah, I think it's such a good concept, this idea of consistency, because that's something I aim for all the time, is to be consistent in my values, consistent in integrity, consistent in, the way that I show up in the world. And when it comes to consistency, especially as a business, right, what people don't realize, and this is, I think, what hurts a lot of people, is they think, okay, no one's paying attention. I only have 45 followers on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever. No one cares if I don't show up. But what that actually tells people is that if I'm going to hire you for X, that when you don't show up consistently, the 1 week you miss, now all of a sudden someone's like, oh, okay, well, if I hire you, you're going to show up when everything's great. And then the 1 week I need you, you're inconsistent, right? So it's that like subconscious messaging that we're getting from people that don't show up. And so for me, starting my podcast, my goal was, I don't care about the downloads. That means nothing to me. I would like to be growing every month. That was a goal of mine. But the real goal for me was showing up every Tuesday, right? Like that, I wanted to record similar to you. Is like, I want people to know that every Tuesday I have an episode coming out and it's going to be great. And if I'm not feeling it that week, tough. Like there's something that I can say that is important for somebody to hear. And I also think, to your point about the, 40 million subscribers and all that, that's really hard to grasp for a lot of people because we're not there. And so to go from 0 to 40 million it's almost, it's setting ourselves up for failure. And I think if you look at your business as one person by one person, you're building it one listener, one subscriber, one download but download equating to a person, then you're setting yourself up for real connection and real sustainability when it comes to growing a business that actually matters and cares for people, which is what I think the majority of people that are watching this would want to build. And so it's get it out of your head of, oh, when I'm famous and when I have these 40 million subscribers, I'm really like, how can I reach one person? And this message, I've got to get out of my own way to allow this message to actually come through. But I've also got to put myself in the way so that somebody will find it because this message is meant for somebody. So consistency for me is all about showing up. And, it's like setting that intention. This is how I choose to show up, being in integrity with your values. What are the most important things in your life? And how do you consistently exude those and really step into that? So as far as, goals for making $1 million this year or whatever, it's like, those don't matter to me as much as who are you? How do you want to show up? What's important to you? And what kind of life are you trying to build? So,
man, if you are not getting fired up, this is a bite-sized chunk. She has a whole podcast that has many episodes. That being said, you have single, just you on the microphone podcast. I've not yet done a podcast like that. How has it been creating your own, because I can't think of another word, curriculum or whatever the topic is per episode? And again, where you started out, and even if it wasn't with Unbecoming, because you had another podcast before that, correct?
Yep,
with those, your whole journey, how did you get so good on the mic?
Oh God, I mean,
on the ones and twos.
I really appreciate that. It's very generous. But everyone says when you're or I heard someone gave me a piece of advice that it takes 25 episodes to really find your footing. That is not true for me. It took me 60 probably. I mean, I couldn't. I was fumbling. I would have I think I have a pretty fun personality, and then the microphone would be here, and I'd be like, I don't know what to say. And it wouldn't come through me. And so I just had to do it, right? I just knew, I was like, okay, one day this is going to click, but I just got to stay consistent. And so, I was just constantly showing up. But for my show, my goal was to do the 52 weeks. That's always what I said was, I'm going to commit to 52 weeks. I have no idea what that's going to look like, but I will be, you can count on me for that. And my first season, it was really, I think I talked about this a little bit, but just now looking back at it, what I really struggled to in the self-doubt, before you release a podcast, as I'm sure maybe you've been through this, where, I was like, this is awesome. This is so exciting. Oh my God, what am I doing? Is anyone going to listen to this? Oh, this is so fun.
Yeah,
it's
like tenfold when you put a camera in front of yourself and you're vlogging, but for sure.
And so it was like this roller coaster of emotions, of doubts, of excitement, just a lot of different things. And so what I decided to do was I took a piece of paper, I set a timer for 3 minutes, and I just said, if I was going to write a book about my life, about the lesson, I love to write anyway, so this is very applicable to me, but if I wanted to write a book about my life or, the lessons that I've learned, what would those 10 chapters be about? And I just wrote them down. I had 3 minutes, and then I just kind of readjusted them a little bit. And actually one of my friends, Jada Selner, she was with me, and we were kind of going through it together, and she's like, all right, now put those in order of priority. And I just thought, that is so good. So that was my first season, was Phoebe Unscripted. And I just wanted to see if I had anything worthwhile to say, because my friends that know me know I talk all the time, but people that know me in the business setting, they know I'm the one behind the scenes. I'm always the marketing one, the strategy, that kind of thing. And so it was just interesting to kind of step out and put myself out there. And then in the process, I just really like to chat on a microphone by myself. I don't know if that makes me kind of weird, but it's really fun for me. And now I'm going to be a little bit better about, I'm not even better, but I'm just changing it up a little bit with, solo shows, interviews, because I do enjoy this connection, but I also feel that it's important for me to connect with my audience and people that are listening to me. And to be honest, the feedback is always better with the solo shows. So, give the audience what they want, I don't know.
I think that's an important concept, especially what you said in the beginning, because in my own personal experience, so I was senior video editor at the Chive, right? And I could edit videos. Like I was there doing the thing, teaching people like some editing and also creating edits. But when I turn the camera on myself to create my own content, it's a completely different beast. Like you could quote unquote be an authority in the subject and be like, oh, listen to me, I know how to edit videos. And then I'm like sitting here, my first couple of like, just like you, like my first like 50 videos are just cringeworthy. And it's just one of those things where you look at it and like, man, I have such, like when I looked at people making YouTube videos before, I was like, oh man, that seems so easy. They're just sitting in their room and like they make this tutorial and all that stuff. But then when I actually sit down to do it, to make an engaging piece of content and actually teach somebody something when it's like free for anybody to just come and click on, that takes talent.
I mean, it takes talent. It takes guts.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's like, it's again that like you've got to get out of the way. And so what I said for those, like what I did was for the first 10 episodes, I actually listened back to them. I wasn't critiquing necessarily I have enough things in my life to critique about, but so I wasn't, and I'm not on video, so it's different, but I was listening for little nuances and things to improve that I say. So I say a lot, or I used to say a lot, for me, blank, blank, blank. And I was like, right, but it is my opinion and I'm talking, so I don't need to say that. So just excessive words or the phrases and stuff. So I would listen to those 10 episodes and then I stopped. And I listened to some of the interviews back just to hear, again, kind of critiquing myself and my interview skills. And because I really do think interviewing is an absolutely amazing skill and I mean, you're great. I've listened to some of your episodes.
Thanks.
But I think
you're like, and we're going to crash and burn now.
I feel like you do a great job. And so I listen to that. I listen to my own shows for that, but everything else, nope. I don't listen to them. I don't want to hear what it is. I'll listen back to certain episodes that I think I was like really in the flow, in the zone, and was like, oh God, I don't even remember saying that. And I do that with my writing all the time. I look back at things that I've written. I'm like, oh, I know exactly where I was when I wrote that, and I know exactly what was going through my head. So it kind of brings me back. But there are enough things I think that we put out in the world that we can use to beat ourselves up with. So why not just be gentle with ourselves, upload it to Dropbox, I send it to my editor, and I just don't look at it again. I don't listen to it because I'm like, I just don't want to feel bad about myself, and so I just had to get out of the way. And feedback coming in, we've talked about when with microphones, you're like, is anyone listening to this? Is anyone out there? And to get the feedback and to get the reviews and people messaging you on, Instagram or wherever they're messaging or sending emails, it's so nice to hear that your story is really resonating with people, and it really helps to keep you going, right? I always read my iTunes reviews before I start recording because then I feel, I get excited again. I'm like, oh, this is why I'm doing it. Of course I have something to say, and it's going to touch someone in a way that, they needed to hear today. So
that's actually a very interesting point for people that are specifically on podcasting as their platform. Can you talk about the avenues that they can pursue to get feedback? Because I feel like that's one of the hardest parts. And that being said, the iTunes review is such a big part of that, I think.
It is. And it is, and it isn't, right? It is because people, I don't find people go out of their way to leave reviews.
It's true.
I never was that person until I started a podcast.
Yes, it's
true. I am always that person now. I write to people, even on iTunes reviews. I leave reviews for everybody that I know that I really respect because, again, what you give, you get. And so I want that. And I want people to know that I really value what they're putting out and what they're creating. And it's hard, right? It's intimidating and it's scary to put your heart on the line, right? It's like just like a relationship. You're like, I always liken it to whenever I'm talking to men, it's like, especially married men, like when you propose, that moment where you're like holding the ring or it's in your pocket and your palms are sweaty, it's like, it's those moments where that's how it feels when you're putting out a podcast. It's scary. You don't know how it's going to be received, if they're going to say yes, all that stuff. And I find that if you can, create that culture of sharing and giving by leading by example, right? So I review everyone that I know and like, and I appreciate to say, hey, I see you and I get what you're doing and I love it. And hoping that by me leading through example, that other people are going to do that for me. And so there is that element of iTunes reviews are important. It's also what's the most important? If I look 10 years down the line, am I going to be bummed that, I only have, 70 or 80 reviews? No. Like in the grand scheme of things, perspective wise, it doesn't matter. But what really matters is the connection that you're creating with the people that you're creating with and for, and, how you're cultivating that. So for me, there we go. For me,
I didn't even notice. I didn't even notice.
I'm so trained now to hear it.
Mine's the term, that's part of it, is in terms of. I notice I say that every single episode, but continue.
So I heard it, and I will correct. But on my show, I create. I have a Facebook community. And then I'm everywhere that I really like to be. So I play to my strengths. I am quite a visual person. So I love Instagram for the photos. I love to write, as I said. So I kind of use that as my blog. I encourage people to go over to my Instagram. I encourage people to interact with me, right? Whenever I'm on shows, I'm like, oh, come join me on Instagram. Send me a message. Because I want, it's one person. And I have gotten the advice a long time ago from a good friend a former friend of mine, and he said, he's like, make sure you're not too accessible all the time. Just like really separate yourself. You can't just call up Tony Robbins and get to him. And I thought, it rubbed me the wrong way. And I was like, that's actually just not how I want to operate, because I want people, if they want to get a hold of me, they can reach out to me. If people appreciate or like what I'm doing, please find me on Instagram, find me on Facebook. And so I'm creating a culture of real connection, in person, offline. And I want it to be where people feel like they belong, where I'm saying things that they're like, oh God, I've never heard it that way. Or, I didn't know anybody else felt that. So for me, it's creating an environment where people can find me on the podcast, but they can also, they hear something, and I'll allude to things, in my move from San Francisco here. I'm like, if you're listening or if you watch me on Instagram, what just happened with the storage unit and whatever. And people are like, oh no, I didn't know that, but I'm going to go find out, and I'm going to go look at her Instagram and see. And so when you come into my world, just like you are, as a friend of mine, I'm going to, I'm a very nurturing person, and I just want you to be in my world because I want to connect with you more. So for me, it's more about deepening the relationships than it is casting the net super wide and finding all the people right away. I want to know who you are. I want to go deeper with you and see how we can create amazing things together.
Somebody reaches out to you. What does that look like on a Instagram DM? Because it's happening to me now. But any kind of, I guess, higher level, what is an example of somebody asking you for advice on something? Yeah.
So I get a lot of that. I get a lot of, I want to pick your brain, which I find just a little bit frustrating because it's so vague, right? And so I used to be like, oh, pick my brain, no problem. I'll jump on a call. And sometimes, depending on what it is, I will do that. But I also am, very specific with who I'm giving my time to, right? I have clients, I have people that are paying for my opinion, my advice, my feedback. And so that's a different level. But when it comes to Instagram, I'm big on, private message me, see what I'm doing, but really interact with my stuff and know who I am. I get a lot of people that will see me somewhere, at a conference or whatever. And they just will message me about something really random. And I'm like, right, but you don't even, oh, do you have a podcast? I'm like, right, that's in my description. Do a little bit of research.
It's interesting because I feel like that's, let me ask this. Do you create content around questions that you get a lot of?
Totally.
I feel like that's in terms of feedback, that's oh, cool. Turns out a lot of people want to know about this, so that's what it turns into. Yeah. But can you dive into what that looks like for somebody at your level that is giving your information as a paid service for your clients? What does that look like for somebody that if they want to reach out to you and they have something specific to make the most efficient use of your time, how would they pursue a question, I guess? If somebody wanted to start, I don't know, a coffee business or something like that.
Pay me, right?
Boom.
I feel like that's the best thing, right? Is if you really value someone's opinion, you value, I think money is an exchange, right? It's it's a currency, and it's ever flowing. And so if you are hesitating to book a call with someone, there's something either in you that's not 100% confident, or in them. And I do understand money troubles, totally get it. So what I did, and I have done a lot, or I did last year, was I would open up 10-minute calls. And so I would just say, right, free for all, book in, my calendar's open as long as there's slots available. And I would do it once, I don't know, I think I did it maybe once a month or once every couple months. And the reason I did that was because I actually reached out to somebody who is very well known. He's built and sold all these companies. He is actually a friend of mine, but I just said, hey, I could really appreciate, I'd really appreciate some advice. And he goes, great, I'll book you in, no problem. And I got in and I saw the invitation and it was for 10 minutes. And immediately my head went in a bunch of different directions. And I thought, 10 minutes? What? You can't even give me 10 minutes, and then I was like, 10 minutes. So it was like a whole range of emotions. And then I have never prepared so much for 10 minutes. I was so clear on what the question actually was that I wanted the answer to. I had done my research. I had whittled it down and really distilled it into the essence of the question that I was really asking. And by minute 7, I had already had my answer. And I was like, this is a huge learning for me. Yeah. And I thought that's what I want to really kind of give to the world or one of the things is be prepared, right? Actually get to the part where you're asking a question. And I get this with my clients. I teach them how to ask better questions, because if you're asking how am I going to do this one specific thing? It's like, well, you're not open to the possibility that that's actually not the solution. And so what is the actual question that you're asking? So when people approach me, and now it's a great reminder, I haven't done one in a while, but to do those 10-minute, consultations or 20 or, 10-minute little segments where that's also really good research for me, because I'm seeing what my audience is struggling with, and I get to see who's paying attention, right? Who sees that I have these 10-minute openings. They're going to come to me because I can help them with what? I don't know. There are a bunch of different things. And so I'll put kind of let's get on for 10 minutes and talk about your marketing. Let's get on for 10 minutes and talk about your podcast, and those are building connections. I get to see them. They get to see me. It's like a real person exchange, and they've never prepared more. You see people that are late, if they're 2 minutes late to a 10-minute call, says a lot. If they're early, I'm like, awesome. All right. They're ready to go and they have a question ready. So it's really not about me. It's about them, and it's about getting them. And this is what I learned in this exchange with my friend was it's actually I'm putting it all back on you and seeing how you respond to that. And that's how I can help you the best, is when I know what the actual question is. So many people struggle with backstory and they tell you their whole life story and then 10 minutes is up and I'm like, okay, sorry, you gotta go. And it's brutal, right? It hurts my heart.
They learn their lesson.
They learn their lesson and they sign up for the next one, right? Mm-hmm. So it's pretty cool, but setting a timer and getting that out. So my advice really to anybody reaching out to somebody is, how can you add value to them, right? And in what form can you really be of service and of value to those people? And then what is it that you really want the answer to? And can you get that anywhere else? And if it's that person, how can you give to them, right? That could be an exchange of in the form, currency in the form of money. That could be in the form of time. I got a job once just saying I would proofread all your pages for free. And the guy was like, do you want a job? And I'm like, no, I actually didn't want a job at the time. I was just reaching out to be of service and of value.
Mm-hmm. 2 things with that. How often do they follow up after the 10-minute thing? And then when they're on the call, most of the time, do most of the people already know the answer and you're just giving them that little nudge in the right direction? Yeah,
it depends what it is. A lot of people are deciding between 2 things, right? And so I'm an and person. I'm like, how can we create an and solution as opposed to it has to be black or white? I live in the gray. That is the story of my life. So figuring out what that solution is for them. And it's, to be honest, everyone has the answers. It just takes the right person to extract the solutions from them. So that's all I'm doing, is I'm just there to kind of field the questions and to ask the right prodding questions to get them to create the answer or unlock the answer for themselves. And then what was the first question?
Do they follow up?
Oh, so I follow. It's funny. I follow up.
Oh, look at that.
I know. I follow up and just ask them I ask them to fill out a little type form survey. And in that, it's how much clarity on a scale of 1 to 0 to 10, how much clarity did you receive? What are your action steps? And again, that actually, it does have probably 20% to do with me, but really it's on them to be a lot of people don't fill it out. I'm like, okay, great. You're not my person, right? My person is like, I value my time. I show up early. I stay for the 10 minutes and I get what I need. And then I get out and I respond to your messages. I fill out the type form, right? And so in those questions, it's like, what are your action steps? I want you to tell me what you're going to do. And especially if the people can't afford coaching packages and stuff, it's like, well, how are you going to get to a place where you can? Or how do you get to a place where you can value, right, my time and your time in a way that is going to get you the results in your business or life that you're after? So I follow up, and then oftentimes they'll, the right ones kind of follow me and keep following me and book in for the 10-minute calls whenever I do them.
I love it, because that in and of itself, what you just said there at the end, that in and of itself, the idea of how do you get to the place of paying for the coaching just is a catalyst to start to do things, One of the things I noticed when we scheduled this is you were talking about your schedule in general and staying on the topic of time. I think you said on Tuesdays and Thursdays, creative, Monday, Wednesday, Friday is a different thing. And also going back to your habits, when did that start, scheduling out how you look at the week and all that kind of stuff? And can you get into just basically how a week for you looks like?
Totally. So I'm going to preface it by saying that I'm an experimenter. So I take on month-long experiments because they're just fun. It's like month-long experiments, adventures, whatever. That's how I kind of live my life.
Seeker of feedback.
Exactly. And then I get to gauge, right? It's like it's an allotment of time where I feel like, okay, I can do it for this. It's like, any kind of exercise routine. You're like, I'm going to train for a marathon. And then half the time after the marathon, you're like, I'm never going to work out again. But in those moments leading up to the marathon, it's so fun to see, because you have a goal attached to it. For me, my goal is time. And so I say for the next 30 days, here's what I'm implementing into my life. And I like to share that with people. And at the end, I've collected so much data in my life. Did it work? How did I feel? And to be able to make an informed decision. So with the podcast, it was like, do 52 weeks. And then if I want to do this again, great. If I want to carry on, awesome. If I don't, perfectly fine. And I don't judge myself for that. So I wanted to, at the start of the year, I was like, here's what, here are the habits that I want to incorporate. And how do I do that in January? So this has been kind of a new thing for me. I've always managed my time really well, but this chunking of days is really different. So I'm doing Monday and Friday is about connection, Tuesday, Thursday is about creation, and then Wednesday is about coaching. And I'm just seeing where everything slots in, and it's really fun. And also, it's really difficult when people want, I'm new to a city and people want to meet up at any point. And I'm like, oh, I'm trying to slot you in just Monday or Friday. And those days are, crazy busy, but it helps me stay in my lane. It helps my brain. When I wake up, I just remember, I'm like, okay, yesterday's coaching day. Awesome. Well, here are my coaching clients. And then at the end of the day, once I'm done with my coaching, I feel open to exploring, all right, what is creation day going to look like? But I've been keeping notes on my phone about what I want to be creating. And it just helps. I'm loving it, actually. So I'm really enjoying this process and looking forward. This is actually how I'm going to go forward for the next 90 days. So that's the first test is 30 days. The next test is 90 days. And then just seeing if I like it, great. If it's not working for me anymore, I got to let it go.
It's such a scientific method to that.
It sounds probably way more scientific than it actually is. I have the concept in my head and I think in terms of, frameworks and structure, but my frameworks and structure allow me to be really fluid, right? So if I have these days, maybe my creation day is like, hey, I just want to go to a wine and paint, but that feels creative to me. And maybe wine and paint would happen on a Monday, or I don't know what wine and something, but maybe it would happen on
wine
a Monday.
Is involved in exactly. Some sort of creation.
Some sort of action. Yeah. It doesn't matter, right? It's like wine. Great. End of story. And, if that happens on a Monday, it's like, awesome. Well, in the spirit of connection, I'm going to bring somebody with me. So it's just the different lenses that I'm looking at life through is, those are three of my values, right? And the coaching for me, because I love alliteration, I turn it into coaching, but really, my big values are like, adventure and travel, creativity, expressing myself, and connection. And then the last one is learning. Like I'm a big learner. That's, I was saying before, like leaders are learners. And so Wednesday for me, I get as much out of my coaching as hopefully the other person does, because it's just an exchange of information. I'm learning about you. you're learning about me. And so really Wednesday is all about learning for me.
Yeah, you mentioned adventure. Can you get into your time not in the United States? Because I know you're a well-traveled person, and coming from the perspective of how did those experiences affect who you are as a person today?
Travel, it just is such a big part of me. I've been traveling, so I think I'm at 64 countries at the moment, and I lived overseas for 7 years. So I started in Taiwan and then lived in China for 3 years.
Sounds awesome.
It was just a blast. Like, it's so fun. And I think the part of the travel, like I used to be like, traveling is, a really high value for me. And it is, but it's more than that. It's the like experiencing life. And so I'm an advocate for really living, right? I'm an advocate for living a life that you're proud of, that you're excited to wake up to, that feels fully fulfilling, right? And so all the emotions, right? It's just like all the high, people think, I think when they look at a real life, a life well lived, it's everything has to be perfect. And I'm like, I just want to ride the roller coaster and really enjoy every moment of it. So that's a big, I talk a lot about presence and how, preparation helps with presence. It helps you feel in the moment. And that's just been my life. And I think travel really gave that to me. It gave me perspective. It gave me the ability to really be present, to learn a ton about myself, to really pay attention to the pause moments, the moments in between the moments, which are for me or have been the most impactful for me of any, of anything. People, I've been all the fancy things, the cage diving with great white sharks and the camping in the Serengeti and all these things that look great on paper. But the moments I really remember are the moments in between the moments that I took to pause and really reflect on who I was and what was changing and what I wanted to let go or who I wanted to let go and how I wanted to show up and what that was going to translate into as far as living a better life and not just my business or not just my relationships, but all of them. And so I think, really travel gave me the perspective, the presence, helped me learn so much more about myself. So self-reflection, and you never know what you're going to find, which I'm a big spontaneous person. I love surprises.
You just moved here out of nowhere.
Exactly. Everyone's like, why'd you move here? I'm like, I don't know. It just seemed like a great place. That is just so much my personality and who I really am is like, I'm not, I act first and I think later, right? And there are great things about that. There are not such great things about that, but I'm in it for the roller coaster. I'm in it for the ride. I'm in it for the fun and the freedom and the flexibility, to have the fulfilling life that I know everybody else can have. I just need to model it for myself first so I can prove to myself that it's possible before I go, spewing it to everybody else.
Of the places that you visited, do you remember more the place or the people that you met?
I remember how I felt. That's probably, I remember how the people made me feel. I remember how the moments made me feel. I was just talking to your mother-in-law and we were talking about like little moments, and I remember getting so like emotional seeing places like the Eiffel Tower, which was a huge surprise for me because that was never a place I really cared about going.
How big is it in person?
It's that was the thing. It was just like I couldn't get over the size. It was so big. The pyramids were another one. The terracotta warriors. It's just like those moments, and I like even get chills thinking about it because I remember my whole, like growing up in 5th grade, I was learning all about Egypt and I wanted to be an Egyptologist.
That's a thing.
Apparently, I don't know. I loved cartouches and hieroglyphics and, papyrus. And then I got there and I was just staring, at sunrise over the pyramids. And I was like, just so overwhelmed with emotion. And so I don't think necessarily it's the places, I have snapshots. I have a very, I would say, photographic memory. I can remember where I was. But in those moments, it's how I felt and how alive I felt. And I was just in India a couple months ago in this one specific place, and I've never felt more like myself. I've never laughed that hard for that long of a period of time, and it was just so fun. So I think it's the moments that are the most impactful for me have been the ones that maybe I wasn't expecting,
Yeah, personally, for me, I was like, that's another way to get around it. Personally, when I saw the Twin Towers when they were there, when I saw them in person, I was flabbergasted. I was just like, my jaw dropped. And when you're standing at the bottom and looking up, because I was a little kid at the time, the fact that something that tall, like when you would look up at it, it looked like the buildings were bending over you, how tall they were. And that was just like, it was one of those things that I could never really comprehend in my brain as a little kid. On a one-to-one basis, if somebody wants to, because you talk about unbecoming, what is one thing that if somebody is not, they don't like where they're at in their job, or maybe they do and they know that they can achieve something more for themselves, what's one tip that they can do? What's one step in the right direction?
I'm not a person that can just give you one thing, so I'm going to give you a couple.
I love it. Let's just go forever.
I told you I'm an and person. The first thing is just to audit where you are, right? You can't know where you're going if you don't know where you are. And so really just to do, I had this annual audit that I talked about on my show, and it was just figure out where you are in life, right? And rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 with no judgment. And that's really hard to do because when you look at in your relationship, your marriage or whatever, your relationships are a 4, there's a lot of things you're going to judge yourself for. Oh, it should be a 10. And what am I? No. And you're going to bump it up. But what I think is when you look at, all right, let's say your relationships are a 4. Okay, great. What makes it a 4? That's awesome. Now, what would make it a 10? And so now you get to really prioritize in your life what's important to you. So doing the audit, and then from the audit, it's like, what are your values? What do you stand for? And I think in that conviction, now you can see your life as, oh, I got it. Like that makes a lot of sense. And if you look back at the story of your life, you're going to pull out these threads of things that really you didn't realize had such a huge impact on who you are in the process of actually becoming the person that you are. And so in the stripping away and the unbecoming, it's, why does this influence me? And how, this story of adventure is throughout my entire life. But I didn't actually really recognize it until I took a step back and had those little silent moments being like, oh, why do I crave adventure so much? What is that? And I thought it was more adrenaline. And then I realized it's not. It was just that was in those moments, certain periods of, adrenaline junkie Phoebe, that side of me. And that's really great. But, what is it about adventure? So really nailing those, what are your top 3 to 5 values that beyond everything else would make you a really happy person if you had those in your life and if your whole life revolved around, 3 to 5 things. So I kind of talked about mine earlier. And then the other thing is just to surround yourself again with amazing people that you want to be like, that you really aspire to be, and people that have your back. And I know a lot of, this is a big thing in the online digital world, especially with masterminds and coaching programs or whatever. And that's awesome. And I am a big advocate for coaching and for masterminds. Obviously, that's why I do them in my own business. But if you don't have those people around you that are going to support you and love you where you are and for where you're going, that are actually going to call you out on your shit, which I have a lot of those friends. And it's really hard to hear and hard to swallow sometimes when they tell me that I'm playing small or, they think I should do this. That's awesome. And that's great feedback. And I really appreciate it. But also acknowledging myself, and I take a step back and I kind of put everything else out that they've said to me and whatever. And I'm like, what do I want? What do I want my life to look like? Right. And you think I'm playing small. Great. That's a projection on you, and to be honest, one of the things that I really strive to is just to be honest, right? In my life, with myself, with other people. Direct and honesty is like one of my goals for this year is just to, it's a filter that I'm looking at everything through is how can I be more honest? How can I be more direct without hurting people's feelings? Because if I'm speaking my truth and it offends you, that's on you, right? But if I'm actually not speaking my truth and I'm sugarcoating something or, tiptoeing around something and it hurts your feelings, then that's actually on me because I'm not stepping up to be the person that I say I am. So being more honest with yourself, surrounding yourself with great people, the other thing is habits. Like, what are your play around with experiments? That's a big thing. I love it. Yeah. I love that concept of, what habits are you getting into? How are you designing your life to look? And that will come in the answer, that comes as a result of finding out what you really want out of life.
With the people that are, when they go to pursue, say it's the goals or any of the concepts that you just brought up, if they are just really vague about, what do I value? How would you frame a outline to have a positive impact on someone's life if they're like, I know I want something better, but I don't know where to go with it, or I know I want to like start this. I know I want to start something, but I don't know if I have something to sell. Like, seems like a very vague question, but I feel like that's where a lot of people are.
I think it's a great question because a lot of people don't ask that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're really considering your audience and, you know, who could be watching this, which is great. And so a lot of people, when I ask them, like, what do you want? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, right, but you do know because you're you and you're an expert on you.
If you just keep repeating the phrase, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And then like they have to say something, like just like keep saying it, and then you just like you whittle it down into whatever it is. But continue.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, that's such a great process, right? It's like, and what? And is there anything else? And is there anything else? And is there anything else? But I think before you even get there, just to figure out, you know, it's a mindset shift to realize what's possible, right? And so it's taking possibility almost off the table, like, or reality off the table and putting possibility where reality should be. And like living into possibility, I think, is one of the most powerful things, because if you don't believe that it's possible, then you're saying something that, you know, it's like, okay, I really want this coffee to be tea. I really, you know, and it's like, well, it's never going to be tea because it's just coffee, right? And so until you see that it's possible for you and you really truly believe that whatever you want is possible, it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter how many meditation retreats or coaching programs you go through. It's never going to matter. But if you start from a place, okay, if anything were possible, if everyone says, if money were no object, my question to myself was always, if I inherited a company worth $20 million or $200 million, I never had to work again.
I would run it into the ground because I wouldn't know how to run that company personally.
But I mean, I don't know. I'd give it a shot.
I would try, but I'd probably hire a whole bunch of other people that would know how to run that company.
Of course. Totally. And the question for me is like, if I inherited this company, what would I want it to be doing? Right? Like, what would I hope that somebody would gift me a company doing? And those things that came up, I was like, oh my gosh, it's not marketing funnels, right? Which was a big shift in my business because I was all about marketing and funnels and Facebook ads. And I was like, I don't actually care about that. What I would want this company to be is living into who you really are and living with passion and purpose. And, you know, my thing is, I think we have seasons of purpose, but that's a whole nother tangent. And, you know, I want it to be personal development and growth and a lifestyle business as opposed to, you know, very technical. That doesn't suit me. That doesn't play to my strengths. That's not what I really care about. I care about funnels because they can sustain a lifestyle. They can create a lifestyle to help you go and do the things that you really want. But I actually care about what you really want, not the funnels, right? So in those questions of, you know, what do you hope? If money were no object, what would you do? If, you know, you had a $20 or $200 million company that you knew couldn't fail, what would you hope it would be? And then also my practice of just journaling. I know a lot of people discount it, and I definitely did for a really long time because I just thought, well, I know what I'm writing and, you know, I can type faster, or, you know, my handwriting sucks, or I can't find a journal, or whatever it is, whatever excuses that we put out. But it's really the ability for your brain to just turn off and for your like real soul or whatever you want to say really come out through the paper. And I do an exercise where I will write with my dominant hand, and that triggers your left brain, right? That turns on your analytical side for you to write whatever it is. And then I answer the same question with my non-dominant hand. It's brutal. It looks terrible. It looks like chicken scratch, and I actually have really good handwriting, so it's hard to manage. But when you write with your non-dominant hand, it activates the right side of your brain.
Because you have to concentrate what you're writing on.
Yeah.
I'm totally finishing your sentence for you.
No,
I'm
totally.
sorry.
It's awesome, but I can see like something clicked and you're like, oh, I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's this, you know, it's the right side of your brain, the creativity, the real like, you know, soulful connection, however, with whoever you want to say it. And it allows that side of you to come out. And I use that kind of trick or whatever it is all the time, because sometimes a lot of times clients and myself, I can speak to it because I know it really well. We live in our heads, right? And we live in our heads. We constantly are evaluating what's the result that could happen. You know, what are the consequences? How could this go wrong? Whereas, you know, your non-dominant hand, I'm using my left hand, is going to trigger and activate something in you that you probably didn't even know possible. You're like, oh, how do I, you know, I ask myself this is a really powerful question to journal about is, how do I want to be remembered? And who do I want to be remembered by? because when you ask the, like, I just got chills. When I get chills, I know it's the truth. And so when I look at that, when I actually ask myself those questions, of course, it's like, who do I want to be remembered by? My ego turns on. I'm like, well, all the people that I'm on stages and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And then when I got to my non-dominant hand, it was like, who do I actually want to be remembered by? My family. For what? For being a person that's really, generous and giving and caring and loving and, nurturing and supportive. And that's who I actually want to be. That's who I really care about. My friends, people that I care about. And it just shifted everything for me, because now I realize that if I'm not living into that, then I'm not being a woman of my word. And that's who I am. I am a woman of integrity. I'm a woman of my word. And so having that exercise is really powerful to see what you actually want to do. And so how do you want to be remembered? Who do you want to be remembered by? And what do you want out of life? Right? And so I ask myself, these are questions that float around all day in my head that I'm constantly reevaluating and looking at. And I know, sorry, this is a very long answer, but the other thing is I set up what I call quarterly questions. And so what I'm doing is I schedule a time after every quarter to, it's normally on a Saturday because it gets out of my week. And I ask at the very beginning of the year, so this would be a great time to do it, is I ask myself specific questions. So the same, how do I want to be remembered? Who do I want to be remembered by? And little things that I would think might be triggering me at the beginning, let's say after Q1. So I have a list of questions that I don't have to think about them. I just know they're in there. They're in my Google Calendar, and I can go back to it and I answer those questions after every quarter. And it just helps to keep me on track. It helps to tell me where I am in the mix of.
Are these specifics? Because what I was going to get to with what you were talking about earlier, one was just to drive across the point. I think like in the early part of your answer, you were talking about scarcity, I think coming from a point of abundance as opposed to scarcity. But when you are making these, this list, are they actionable things? I think it's like SMART is the acronym. Right, yeah. But when people are doing this, is it important to make it an actual quantifiable goal? Like, and just like with the 40 million subscribers, or say you like, I want to have, I don't know, 1,000 more followers on Instagram or whatever that may be. Is it something like that, or is it something more ambiguous?
Yeah. So I don't know if it's more ambiguous. It's more open-ended.
Open-ended. So it's a great word.
I both, actually. So the answer to that question is both. I'm an and person. So if we're looking at, 40 million subscribers, it's like, okay, if that's my goal, right, what am I, and then we break it into habits and all this. And it's like, how consistent have I been in my attracting new subscribers? So that would be a question, like rate myself. So I'll do like a rating. Again, I like audit my quarter. And so I'm auditing, like, where am I in that process? What have I been doing consistently? How have I been showing up? And then where am I? Like,
dude, you're just bringing in like all the concepts that you talked about throughout the podcast, like into one. Oh, it's awesome.
It just because this is like, I think how we should be living is like not a more balanced life, not just a more integrated life, right? Like integrating all the pieces of ourselves. And that's why anytime you see me, here or on my show or on any other show, it's like, just because that's who I am. So it should be similar concepts, not the same wording, not canned responses, but who I am. And so this is how it incorporates, or how I integrate it into my life is, with the questions, it's, yep, how am I doing? How am I doing am I being consistent with my habits? How have my experiments been going? What have I enjoyed? What have I not enjoyed? What do I want to make changes moving forward? And so there are open-ended questions, and then there are the specifics, just to remind me to actually get into the numbers. I used to be a big numbers person. I sort of am still, but it just reminds me to go back and actually look, what's my Facebook ad spend, and, like little like actual details. So I do have both, but for me, what really works is the open-ended questions, because then I sit and write.
Yeah, and it sounds like just from having the open-ended questions, you're asking more of yourself if you are being consistent in the nature of that. Right. Consistency is key. Maybe that's the title of this episode.
Totally. That would not be a surprise to anybody that I know, because I'm very big on consistency.
Yeah. As we begin to wrap this up, I know you are a proponent of who you are.
Yes.
But I asked 2 questions of everybody at the end of the episode, and it's, why do you do what you do?
So why I do what I do is really to create the life that what I want to instill and inspire in other people, right? I live a life of integrity, of adventure and fun, so that so I can raise other people up. That's really my goal in life, is to inspire other people to live into who they really are, to live more fully. I'm an advocate for truly living, to help other people see who they, my why goes always back to my who, is like help other people see who they are and see the magic in what their gift is and what they have to offer, and how they can help other people, and how we can all just stop pretending that we are other people and just really start embracing and accepting and unbecoming, and this whole process of really fully living into a more meaningful life.
Being both interested and interesting.
Exactly. I'm an and person. Yeah.
I love it. I love it, because you're like, any kind of question that I ask, you can kind of get the answer. Like you are who you are, and it just, you don't have to really focus on a question because it's just there. It's so cool. And then for anybody that wants to get where you're at now, from the point, like, let's say it's before you started your other podcasts and everything, from that point to right now, what's some advice that you could give to living the life that you have now, if you were to talk to yourself back then?
Yeah. So number one is get real clarity. Figure out what you want and why you want it and why it's important to you. Figure out what your values are. Get coaching. Get some sort of help. Get some sort of guidance with people that are where you want to be. Right. Look at all areas of their life.
How would people find a coach?
So I find that in my past, the best coaches that I've ever found have found me, right? I am at a conference and they're speaking, and I go up to them and I approach them. But I also a mistake I think people make when choosing a coach is they choose them based on their business metrics, right? And that's fine, and that works. And, you are going to choose based on whatever metrics are important to you. But for me, I look at their whole life, right? So my coach is, somebody who I really admire, and I love his relationship, and I love his kids, and I love the way he shows up. And, I don't just like this one sliver of who he is. I like a bunch of different things. So surrounding yourself with a lot of people, right? You can have more than one coach for more than one purpose, but just making sure that those people are in alignment with who you say you are, because they're going to help you get there. So finding a coach or a program, surround yourself with people that really, really give a shit about who you are and that you achieve your dreams, that have your back, won't let you fail, and celebrate you the whole way. And then always be learning, right? That's like a constant in my life, is stop taking yourself so seriously. This is what I'm telling the Phoebe of a couple years ago, is like, stop taking yourself so seriously. Focus on helping one person after one person after one person. Don't make it about 50 million subscribers. It's not about that. It's how are we actually showing up to be of service to other people? How do we show up to represent ourselves fully, authentically, vulnerably, and really share yourself with the world? And then just ask your question, how do you want to be remembered? What is so important? And we're all here uniquely. We're all, we all look different. We all act different. We all have different values. John DeMartini says that your values are just as unique as your fingerprint. And I thought that is so good, because I think values can be lumped into this whole thing, this whole conversation about, honesty and whatever. And we're kind of like rolling our eyes, but really, truly, what I value is going to be different from you. And so how can you really embrace that? And then just be okay to be different, be okay to be weird, be okay to be awkward. I mean, I embrace it all the time, and I share that and share through the mess. I share a lot. People are like, oh, it's so courageous that you share you like ice cream or something. And I'm like, does everybody not? Like, I operate as though everybody is going through what I'm going through, as opposed to nobody knows what I'm going through. And when you embrace that attitude, doors will open. People want to help. Share your dreams out loud, and tell people what you're up to.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with those individuals. I think that was that the concept behind your episode MVP?
Oh, so that was more like positioning.
Positioning yourself.
Yeah. And so that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, I was like, let's go into even more of a answer.
Right.
Where can people find you? And if you haven't already just gotten any nuggets of knowledge or piqued your interest into checking her podcast, please do it.
Thank you. I would love to welcome you into my community. So I am at unbecomingpodcast.com or Phoebe Mroczek, which hopefully you'll have spelled out somewhere correctly because it's...
Did I say it right in the beginning?
You did. Well, I didn't correct you, so I don't know. So It must have been right.
Yeah.
And that's always how we start off any interview is people misspell my name or missay it. And I'm like, all right, it's fine. Let's just get on with it. But PhoebeMroczek.com, unbecomingpodcast.com. And then, as I said, I'm always on Instagram. I love sharing with people my life. I love connecting with people. Or you just send me an email, Phoebe@PhoebeMroczek.com. I'm very open about giving my email out because I want people to contact me and connect.
Mm-hmm. And you have a Facebook group as well, don't you?
I do. Yep. So unbecomingpodcast.com/community. And that is where I go live every Wednesday. I go live on Instagram every Monday. I do a makeup and wake up and I do my makeup in my bathroom and talk to people about what they want to hear about. Podcast is released on Tuesday. And then I do a live inside my community on Wednesday.
Awesome. Yeah, when you told me about that, the Facebook group thing, I was like, awesome, and hence feedback, because you're getting to interact with the people and hear what they want to actually, I guess, hear.
Yep.
It's here.
It's feedback, right?
Oh my gosh.
That just got a game. As you said, I was like, I should.
There's an episode for you right there.
Totally.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
I really just thank you. You've just been such a present host, and it's really nice. This is my first in-person interview, which is so nice.
And it's on camera.
Exactly. It's just double whammy. But it's been so nice, and I've just, we haven't known each other that long, but however I can do, whatever I can do to help you, I'm just really grateful, and I'm excited to share with your community, and however I can be of help and service to you, please let me know. So glad you are in Austin. Thank you. For sure. All right. If you would like to share this out on any social things, you can tag me at Javier Mercedes X. That's Javier Mercedes X. And till next episode, live a life of abundance, and I'll see you guys on the next one.